Chapter 16, Welcome to My World. That Sunday, Carter came by Emma's apartment. He seemed to sense right away that a certain demureness was called for upon entering the home that she had shared with Omar. He kissed her on the cheek upon greeting, sighed when he took in the sight of her. It was spring, and Emma was wearing a crisp white shirt, a camel-colored midi skirt, and a pair of light tan, knee-high Prada boots. Her hair was in a high bun, and as she moved through the room, Carter thought she had the grace of a ballet dancer. He noticed that age made some women jittery. They dealt with the inevitable changes in their body and the world around them with a low-grade hum of frustration that followed them around like a car that needed a tune-up. Emma was different. She carried the years lightly, like a musician whose familiarity with the music gave them the confidence to improvise. The foyer of her condo offered a glimpse into the living room and the rooms beyond. He could see at a glance that she had, in the years since they'd last met, become an art collector with a discerning eye. He admired the mix of old and new that animated the walls of her space. There was a nod to the old masters, with classically wrought portraits by Kerry James Marshall and Barclay Hendricks, a rendering of the night sky by the Philadelphia-born artist Howardina Pendle, and he could see in the living room, in a pride of glance on the largest wall, a work that was a favorite of his, Glenn Ligon's Negro Sunshine. He wondered, feeling ever so slightly competitive with the artist on her walls, if she had ever seen any of his work in museums or galleries. Had she ever come to any of his shows? Did she like his work? Did she think the gamble he had taken when he had walked out of her life had paid off? Carter realized how much he still wanted to impress Emma, to prove that he was worthy. He'd thrown down the gauntlet and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, and he'd meant it. They were in their 60s. With a little good luck and a lot of green juice, it was possible they could have a full 30-plus years together. He hoped greedily for decades that might balance the scale of all the years they had spent apart. That spring day, they took off from Emma's Central Park apartment and headed downtown. They took Fifth Avenue, stopping for Korean food on 32nd Street. When they were young, Koreatown hadn't even existed. Over steaming bowls of bibimbap and warm cups of barley tea, they began to talk about the future. "So, how is this going to work?" Emma asked. Carter had more experience with improvising a life plan than she did, but finally, she was ready to do what she couldn't all those years ago: go with the flow. He said, "Let's take it day by day. It'll take time for us to intertwine our lives together. If in a year you still feel the way I hope you do, then I'd like to invite you to come live with me in Europe. We can spend the summers at my place in San Sebastian, the winters at my apartment in Paris, and we can come back to your home in New York as often as you'd like." 3 weeks later, they traveled together to San Sebastian, and then spent the entire month of May at his apartment in Paris. She hadn't been back to Paris since Omar had passed away, but Carter's Paris was different. She and Omar always stayed in the 7th, near the Eiffel Tower. Carter lived on the other side of the river, in the 12th arrondissement near the Gare de Lyon train station. His apartment faced a giant park that Emma had never visited, called the Bois de Vincennes, and that locals called the Lungs of Paris. While Emma and Omar sometimes traveled to Paris with friends and were well known at their favorite hotels, they did not have a circle of French friends. Everyone knew Carter in his neighborhood. He and Emma often went out for lunch, but most evenings they ate in. On Sunday nights, almost without arrangement, Carter's apartment turned into a bustling salon. Around 8 in the evening, friends would arrive with flowers and wine and cheese. Carter would put out a platter of roast chickens he had picked up from the Moroccan market, spiced with flavors Emma had never tasted. As a soundtrack of Latin and African music played, Carter would deftly arrange platters of fresh fruit, cheeses, and meat with big bowls of sliced baguettes. People would stay until well after midnight, talking and drinking and smoking cigarettes, which Emma was surprised people still did. Emma loved the way the conversation veered back and forth between French and English. She surprised herself with how much French she remembered from her childhood in New Orleans. Her Creole grandmother spoke French almost exclusively around the house, but once Emma came to New York, she hardly used it. But after a short time, it was back again. She found herself making jokes and jumping into conversations. She went to a French bookstore and purchased French graphic novels that she devoured with the energy of a kid who has just discovered comic books for the first time. Her favorite was by a French African woman named Marguerite Aboué. Aboué's Aya series centered on a trio of young West African women managing love, marriage, and motherhood for the first time. The characters reminded her both of herself as a young woman and of her girls. She devoured all of the books in French in quick fashion. Aya of Yope City, Love in Yope City, and the best one of all, The Secrets Come Out. Emma missed Perry, Olivia, and Billy more than she expected, but she also couldn't wait to bring them to Paris to share with them the community Carter had created in that vaunted city.